I know teachers right now are into their 40s who are still paying college loans off.
The people that aren't in education complain about what we're not doing in education. You're like, all right, so the people that are doing cool stuff, you almost have borderline a moral obligation to say, all right, this is what I'm doing then.
Let me ask you a very quick question. Is it easier to get a passport than it is to substitute teach?
Yep. Like, be lazy. Well, if I'm training people to be teachers, be lazy. Yeah, shut up and let them do it.
There's two emotions that I straddle, right? Is hope and worry. So I'm worried to death about kids, but I'm super hopeful about the future.
Education wants the instant gratification. They want the weeds. They don't want the trees.
CTE is coming gangbusters for the traditional, practitioners who don't want to even entertain moving things around for the sake of efficacy.
Do we need as much time as we need to do school?
I mean, if you're asking a 14-year-old, they're going to tell you a weekend will be fine. But no, I want to challenge kids.
If you're about to listen to this podcast, buckle up.
You're listening to the Disrupt Education Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Hostrawser and Alli Dahl.
Welcome back to the Disrupt Education Podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Peter Hostrawser, and some awesome guests, which we'll bring on here in a second. But Peter, how are you doing?
I am madly writing curriculum. I'm in the dog days of summer and really enjoying it though. Utilizing and learning AI. Whether we're making some videos, we're going deep into chat and Gemini. I just love learning in it, and that's basically where we are. And right now it's still extremely muggy and hot. That's so it's good to be indoors most of the day. Evenings and mornings I'm outside, but yeah, man, just writing curriculum. So how are you doing?
I'm good. It literally, as we hit record, the sky's opened up and it's pouring rain right now. I'm like, hello. I mean, we need the rain. Got a lot of stuff in the garden that can use it, but it's been particularly lush start to summer. I'm so excited. I'm really geeked about today's conversation because today we're bringing some of my former students on the podcast, two of them that I've known now, this is blowing my mind, 8 years, coming up. I've known them since their first day of freshman year of high school, and they just graduated college. I'm like, what happened between then and now? And so this series, we've had guests that basically were in high school 8 years ago. And now, back when you started the podcast, and these girls were in high school back when you started the podcast. And so they've been in the same time period. They just graduated college, and let's bring them on. So we have Lindsay McDonald and Alli Caudill. Welcome, ladies.
Hello. Happy to be here.
Yes. Why don't you guys just share a little bit what you just, college and just what you're doing currently or thinking about doing currently. And start us off with a little intro. Lindsay, you want to go first?
I'll go first. My name is Lindsay McDonald. I just graduated in May from Missouri S&T with my bachelor's in environmental engineering. And currently I just started a job a little under 2 weeks ago. As an assistant water resource engineer. So I work with stuff like flood control and sewer lines, super interesting stuff. Probably gross to some people, but I like it.
That's awesome. Happy?
Okay, yeah, I'm Alli Caudill. I just graduated from Wake Forest University in May. I graduated with a major in psychology and a minor in neuroscience, and I have no idea what I'm doing right now. Figuring it out.
I love that. You don't have to have things figured out. We say that on the podcast all the time, but it can be nerve-wracking to put that out in the world and be like, hey, I'm an open agent. I actually have loved those times in my life where I've pivoted and totally I left teaching 3 years ago and I didn't really have a plan, right? And I wasn't 22, even when I graduated high school, college, I should say. I did AmeriCorps and gave myself a year to figure things out, and then like totally pivoted. I thought I was going to go into social work and public health, and then like started that, hated it, and then spent a year figuring out what am I going to do next, and then got into teaching, which is how I met you guys. So it's totally fine to be like, hey, I'm a free agent and I don't know what I want to do.
Yeah,
um
Alli, you're going to be a dentist. So
I,
yeah. I don't know if they know that. See,
I did not know that.
so, and
yeah.
by the way, if you obviously we haven't met yet, but as when I came out of college, I was a communications major, and the first thing I did was go to bartending school. So you guys are all good, right? So that's amazing. And Lindsay, we should probably connect you with one of our previous guests, who's an environmental engineer, Liam, right? There's a
Oh,
connection there. So he was in that. I wanted to ask both of you then, like, so what got you into psychology and Enviro? Like what was it like? If you can kind of walk us through maybe high school and drop some teacher slang here, the priv. But yeah, I mean, we'll start with you, Lindsay. Like how did you know, like from high school going all the way through in Mizzou to get to your degree? And then we'll go to Abby as well in Wake Forest. That's obviously a different location. So there's some different things there. So kind of unpack that. We'll start with you, Lindsay, if you don't mind.
yeah, I had no idea that I wanted to do this for a very long time. In high school, no offense, Priv, I loved my chemistry class, but I was super into English and I loved reading and writing and arguing about what I just read. And so for a long time, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And I somehow convinced my parents to send me to a law camp at Yale because it's better to spend a couple thousands on a camp than multiple thousands on a degree. Um, so I went there and I found out I did not like it. And reading is not as fun when it's not fiction. So I, I kind of, at that point, it was my junior year and I was like completely lost with what I wanted to do. But I've always been like kind of good at math and science. And then the semester that COVID happened, I was taking an astronomy class that I really liked. And I loved learning about space and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, I could do this. But I figured astronomist was probably a bit of a reach for a career. So I wanted to make some money and I kind of met in the middle with aerospace engineering. So I went into Missouri S&T, declaring my major as aerospace engineering. And the first year was just kind of like general education courses and like basic engineering courses. And I really liked all of that. And then my fall semester of my sophomore year, I had my first like aerospace class and I hated it. I failed it. And even before I found out I failed it, I went to my counselor and I was like, I don't care whether I pass or fail. There is no way I can take a class remotely like this ever again. And I didn't even know what I wanted to switch my major to. And frankly, I was looking at the easy ones.
Mhm.
I liked the engineering part. I just didn't like the aerospace part. So I was thinking about all of the different engineering majors, and the easiest ones were environmental engineering and engineering management. And I dabbled with bamboo toothbrushes in the past. So I just decided to go with environmental engineering and see how
Mm-hmm.
it went. And I don't even think I really knew what environmental engineering was when I changed my major to it. But I started taking the classes and ended up really enjoying it, which was something I didn't experience in my aerospace class. Like, whether or not I understood it was never really the issue. It was like whether or not I wanted to understand it. And so I found that like my environmental engineering classes were much more interesting to me. And I like was more passionate about succeeding in them because I actually cared about what I was learning.
Got
So
it.
it was a
Awesome.
long journey, but
No, yeah, that's
I love
great. No,
that.
I love that story. Thank you. I've got a few thoughts there. That's great. I know Allie does too. Abby, how about you? So psychology, off to Wake Forest in the Carolinas. How'd you get there?
Honestly, one of our like mutual friends in high school had visited there and was just like, I know you're applying to like 8 million schools because it's COVID year. I went to this place and I thought you would really like it. And then I checked out the application, and the application was like the strangest questions I had ever seen. And I was like, okay, this would be fun. And then I applied and I got in and I tore it and I ended up liking it. So made my way over there. I always kind
Nice.
of knew that I wanted to go a little bit farther from St. Louis, though.
Sure.
Yes.
So let's go back into psychology then. So how did that
Mhm.
transpire? Like, so we'll go all the way back to the Priv. I'm totally going to call you the Priv from now on, Ellie. So at least for this episode.
It was
But
a
then
sick
going back your
nickname.
freshman year all the way through. So starting with the Priv, how did you get to where you are? Like, can you kind of share that path?
Yeah, I mean, I would say a little bit similarly to Lindsay, I always had kind of like an aptitude for like English and history and stuff like that. So I feel like a lot of people around me really expected me to go either some sort of like law or English or something like that path. Sorry, my family is walking around
It's all
in the
good.
kitchen.
Awesome.
I love seeing like,
But
hey dad, what's up?
yeah, but I honestly enjoyed science a lot more than I did kind of English and history, at least in like a school or like work context.
Mhm.
Probably partly because of Priv. You made it very fun. And so I think for a while I was kind of like, oh, I want to do the engineering route because I feel like that was kind of a big thing when we were in high school and then we were going into college. Everybody was pushing like engineering's where it's at, engineering's where the jobs are, like engineering. And so I'd always kind of been passionate about like not exactly mental health research, but like Alzheimer's research. Just like that had really touched my family and was something that I'd wanted to work on. So after going to like a couple of these like college camps and things like that, I was like, biomedical engineering, that's what I'm going to do. And so I went to Wake and I was like, I'm going to do their B&B program, which is like kind of like engineering, but it's like biomedical biology and like chemistry. And I got there and I was like, ooh, that's awful. I did my chemistry class and I was like, oh, that's not for me. And my calculus and all of that. But I still very much like had a similar goal of like, oh, I want to do Alzheimer's research. I want to focus on neurodegenerative diseases and maybe also mental health. And so the like next best thing for me, I switched to like a psychology and neuroscience path somewhere in my like sophomore year of college and kind of stuck with that. I really, really loved it. Very passionate about learning those sort of things. I just found it fascinating. I think the brain is so cool.
Yeah.
But I kind of got to a point around, honestly, probably senior year when I was looking at applying. My whole plan had been to go and get a PhD in neuropsychology. I was hoping to do my project on like fMRI studies of how music affects people with Alzheimer's when used in a therapeutic context. And as I was applying and looking at that stuff, I was like, ooh, 6 more years of school right now sounds awful. I was pretty burnt out and working in a wet lab where I was pretty much like slicing rat brains in a basement by myself for hours and hours a day and then like staining and analyzing the data. And I was like, I can't imagine doing this like 30, 40 hours a week for the next 6 years. So I finished my degree because senior year is a little bit late to change that. And also, I genuinely do love psychology, and I think there's a lot of things that I can do with that. But now I'm at a space where I'm pivoting a little bit and trying to figure out what it is I actually want to do for 40 hours a week.
Mhm.
So that's
Yeah.
where I'm at.
Nice.
I love it. I'm okay. So it's you guys had probably, one of the wildest times to be in school, high school, right? You ended with COVID
Yeah.
essentially, right? And
Mhm.
I feel like that was a big transition point for youth. And you guys probably still were on the tail end of like the big push for college. And now it seems like high schoolers are like, if you guys have younger siblings, they're kind of questioning it more. And I'm curious if you remember, like, was there any other path for you besides college? Did you consider that? Or are you hearing that at all now? And do you feel like college was the right choice for you? I know, big question, but like we're really curious. You're just finished, like, right? Like, could I have done it differently? Should I have just spent the last 4 years doing what I just did? Yeah, whoever, wants to take that one. I'm
Love it.
curious.
Priv dropping the heavy questions early.
I want to know.
Yeah.
Abby's giving me a look. I'm gonna go first.
Okay. I'm just saying, I have strong opinions, so you go first because you're probably more positive.
Let's see. Yeah, college was just always what I saw myself doing. Growing up, my parents were like, Lindsay, you're so smart. I can't even imagine having a child having such an amazing brain. Like they thought I was the best thing in the entire world. And they were both house cleaners that didn't go to college,
Mhm.
and they felt very limited by what they could do because they didn't go to college and they didn't have any like formal training of any kind.
Mhm.
So I think just from a very young age, my parents expected me to go to college, not necessarily because it was like a societal expectation, but just they always wanted me to be in a better place than they were. And like the security of a degree is always nice to fall back on, because at the very least, even if you hate it, you can do the job that you got a degree in. So I always knew that I was going to go to college, and I was in high school, I was a very good student. That kind of dropped off, but I was always like very academically focused, and I liked that. That was kind of my thing. I didn't really do sports or theater, or I didn't have any talents. I was just kind of smart, and that was it. Uh, so college was pretty much the only thing I felt like I could do. Um, and it was the only thing that I wanted to do. I thought about different options, and nothing really felt right.
Mhm.
And then looking back now, I love my college experience because it got me to where I am now. And I feel like in college, I learned more about how to learn and how to be a leader and interact with people, rather than like learning what I was supposed to learn in my courses. And I've been talking with my coworkers recently. I've just started my job, and I feel like an idiot. I feel like I don't know anything. I feel like my classes did not prepare me for anything I'm doing. And they were all like, you're not an idiot, you're just new. And college really doesn't prepare you for your job at all.
Mm.
And so it got me thinking, like, what was the point of it? But I think when it at the end of the day, the point of it is that it got you the degree, and you couldn't get the job without the degree. So I'm happy that I did it, because it opened so many doors for me, and I feel like I grew so much personally throughout that time in my life.
Mhm.
So I'm very grateful for my education journey, but I do think it could use some work in the way that it's formulated and how it prepares you for the outside. But all in all, I'm pretty happy with how it was for me.
Got it.
They're downplaying these girls are exceptionally gifted, talented students. I knew it from very early on. Don't shake your
Seem
head
very
at me.
humble, right?
No, I know. Like I should preface, like, I didn't really like play it up, but like I only had these girls for a semester
Mhm.
but they were in my room almost every single day until COVID, right?
Mhm.
Like I spent a lot of time with them, and we just like before school, it wouldn't have been before school if they weren't there, doing homework, making jokes, bringing their friends in, helping me do lab prep, who knows?
Right, right.
Um, yeah. So, Abby, what do you think about that question? College and the path, and if it was worth it?
Honestly, I have very similar feelings to Lindsay. I would say that so my parents are both doctors, and like most of my family is like doctors, lawyers, engineers, something like that. So it
Mhm.
was always very much like you're going to college, that you go to high school to go to college. And I remember I did not do well during COVID. I don't know if some people like manage that super well. I did not. um, I was just like felt like I was like free floating because I'm very like routine oriented and things like that. And I
Mhm.
have two younger siblings, and my parents were essential workers or whatever. So they were gone. It was my two dogs, my two younger siblings, and like our house. And there was just like no rules, no structure, just like school in your room when you could.
Mhm.
So I was not like particularly motivated. I was not enjoying school the way that I like had before. I mean, I think that social element and also just like being in person and being in that different environment allows you to like set everything else aside and be like, here I am to learn. And not having that at home was really not great for me. So I got like, I don't even know if it's like burnout because it wasn't that I was working so hard that I was burnt out. It was just like the environment wasn't great. And I have always been kind of an indecisive person, especially about like big decisions, just like paralysis about, I don't know, like, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? It's hard to know at like 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, So I told my parents my senior year, I was like, I don't want to go to college right now.
Mm.
It was like a whole big deal. My parents were not a fan of what I had to say because I was very much like, I feel like I need a year. Like, I don't know what I want. I feel like I can't pick a school, not knowing what I want, all these sorts of things. And I feel like you're told that I'm going to get a little philosophical here. You're told that like college is the time for finding yourself and finding what you want, which in certain aspects it's true, but like I went to like private college in North Carolina, and thankfully my parents paid for it, but like that is a really expensive way to find yourself.
Yeah.
And just like if I was my parents, that is maybe not what I would have done with my child. But I mean, I did really love the college experience. I really bought into it, and obviously, I ended up going. I didn't get to take a gap year, and in some ways, that was good for me because I got to, do the routine, try something new, kind of break out of my home comfort zone where I might have just like sat in that like COVID space and wallowed a little bit more. Um, and I mean, I met great people. I'm so much more of like a person, like a whole person with thoughts and ideas and leadership qualities and like passion than I definitely was before college. But I would say also like coming out of the other side of it and not knowing what I want to do is super. I just feel like I'm kind of in the same space that I was when I was 18 and I was like, hey, I don't know what to do. And yeah, I mean, I think college is helpful because, like Lindsay said, the degree is like on every single job that you're applying for, it's under basic qualifications. Like they won't accept you if you don't have the degree. Um, it doesn't matter sometimes even what degree, it's just do you have one? So I don't know what it is from a job standpoint, like if that's something that like the degree actually is preparing you for stuff or not. But I would say that like the degree is helpful for like getting your foot in the door. But I don't know if it like helped me find myself and my path in the way that I think my parents or I thought that it would.
Hmm.
It was exploratory and it was nice and I had a great time and I like met my people and I found, like I said, I am passionate about what I learned in school. I just don't I don't know if it's like prepared me to be a 20 something adult in the quote unquote like real world.
Got it.
So long-winded
No, no,
answer.
These are
thank you both for
great.
sharing those. Yeah, I mean it's interesting. There's a lot of similarities and there's a lot of differences as well. I mean, I think the number one thing is that even my parents were like, "You're going to college, right? You're gonna go," and it was a thing that I can really empathize with both of you. It was something that I had to do. And again, Lindsay, I think when you're in a room and you feel like you don't know anything, you're actually in the right room. Like you're in a room where you can learn from people and different things like that. But you're kind of sold the fact that like, you should know all this now that you have this degree. And that's, I think that communication is different. And as well, with Abby, talking about what you should probably have some clarity, yet most students really don't have a lot of clarity coming out. So I wanted to ask you both, so going in, you both realize that the cost of a post-secondary education, especially a 4-year degree, can be very expensive, extremely expensive. And even some of the community colleges. I mean, my son is finishing up his associates, and that can be expensive depending on where you are in your life, as a family, or your funds and such. My question to you then is, how do you think, and I know, like, I get graduation. I was teaching business at a high school when COVID hit, and it was a really terrible time for a lot of people. My daughter is very similar to you, Abby. Like, she just did not do well. My son loved it. Like, he was up in his room, and and because he's more of kind of the, I don't want to, like, you know kind of put him in a shell, but like, he is an IT guy, and he really likes to work with his hands by himself. So that's what he does. He works on his car, he builds computers, da da da. My daughter's very social, so it was very difficult. But I want to kind of go back into that clarity and understanding some different things of maybe what you love to do, and then what you're good at, and then what the world needs, and then what you're going to get paid for. I heard that kind of going through that in high school, or before you go off to a post-secondary educational system, camp, or whatever. It sounds like a couple of you went to camps as well. What do you think? Is there a better way in secondary or even primary to expose you to some different options? I mean, not options out of college, but options of, because you both said I wanted to go here. And I quickly figured out while I was in college, I took a class, and thank you, Lindsay, for throwing that out there. Big F. I withdrew from accounting right away. I got you. But yeah, you see these
Been there.
classes, and then you're like, whoa, this isn't for me. Is there something that you could see, or maybe a suggestion, if you were to kind of build into your journey, what would have helped given you more clarity and help you along in your decisions, like you were talking about there, Abby, as well?
Honestly, I don't know. That's a tough question because I feel like I had a lot of opportunities to explore different things within my electives. Like throughout all of my schooling, I was exposed to like different foreign languages. I took a forensics class, I took an astronomy class, I took a bunch of different art classes. Like I feel like there's just something about the teenage brain there where it's like no matter what you give it, it's never gonna know what it wants to do or what it likes or what it's good at. I feel like it's almost something like innate about young people where we just don't know. Like, and no matter how many, there was engineering courses available. I didn't take them. Like, no matter how many things you throw at a teenager, I don't know if anything can really help them. That's not a hopeful answer at all,
Yeah,
but
no, that's fair.
It's reality.
Yeah.
Your brain doesn't even does not stop developing until you're 25.
Yeah.
Like we push all this stuff on students and young people to make a decision, make a choice, and it is too early. And Peter and I talk about this all the time on the podcast. It's like, that's why we're interested in like the messaging and what you guys are raw, right? You just went through it, right?
Yeah.
Like, so, like, how is that messaging impacting you? And so, Abby, that question that Peter asked, and just kind of leaning into what you experienced and the messaging of young people with, you got to figure it out now.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what do you
Abby's
think?
going to throw out frontal lobe right now. I can tell.
Oh, yeah. I would love to talk about the brain, but I would say the messaging is a lot of what I kind of talked about in my last answer, where it's like you go to college and you figure it out. Like you're right outside of high school is where you go and you figure out what you want. You probably didn't know what you wanted in high school, but hopefully enough that you chose like the right institution to go to afterwards, and then you'll figure it out and you'll emerge from college and you'll have the answer. And honestly, like, I am not an outlier among my friends when it comes to either not having a job or not knowing what you want, or even having a job that you got that you maybe already know that you don't want. There's a lot of people that if they have a job, they settled for a job because they were like, this is the job market sucks right now for entry level stuff. And they were just like, this is what I've got and I'm going to try it. And I think we as young people, since we don't know what we want and we're constantly like changing it, we're okay with being like, I will leave this in a year and find something new if I don't like it, which is good. I mean, I've talked to my mom about this a little bit and she was like, yeah, we never had that perspective. We had very much like, you got a job, and as long as everything was fine with that job, you just stayed in it forever. So that's, that's interesting and that's different. But I think that messaging is very much like, you'll find who you are at the end of the tunnel of college. And I think even people that like know what they want aren't like settled in it, if that makes sense. But I think something that would have been helpful for me personally, either in high school or in college, is instead of taking classes, like classes about more subjects, it would have been helpful to have a class that was literally dedicated to teaching you about different careers. Because one thing that I learned, I got a career counselor in my spring semester because I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing now that I'm not applying to a PhD. And she was like giving me all these options. And I was like, I literally had no idea that these jobs existed. Like when you go into the corporate world, what is happening there? Every time somebody tells me their job, I'm like, that can't be real. But there are so many jobs that they literally never tell you about because they're always pushing, like, again, doctor, lawyer, engineer, nurse, like the ones that you think of when you see those like career day posters or things like that. But like having actual people with like various different jobs, whether they got them through college degree, technical school, or like whatever, come in and literally talk about what they do on a daily basis and how they got there, I think would have been really, really helpful for me. Because again, I feel like we're exposed to the same like 6 jobs and the like pathways to get there. And that is not what like the majority of people are doing. So being exposed to like literally people that are doing jobs and not just like, here's what learning about the subject of their job is, because that's not, I mean, that's what I found out is I love studying psychology and I love studying neuroscience, and being in the wet lab and doing that work is not that fun. So, the job and learning the material are very different. So I think having classes where you're exposed to the job and to the people doing the job firsthand would have been really helpful.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of like pie in the sky, even myself, like as an educator, it was, you guys got me, 5 years into teaching. And so at that point, I felt like I had a little bit more perspective of how to kind of help students see their strengths and whatnot. But like now I would even be better at it, having left the classroom and like talked to so many people about all these different ideas around education and how to help young people, kind of figure out who they are, or not just that, but like figure out a good next step that doesn't involve maybe hundreds of $1,000s of debt, right? Like potentially for someone. But it is this messaging that we do here. And thank you both for being very honest. And I knew you guys would, which is why I was like, I have to have you guys on the podcast. There's no one else that would be just so like open about your experience. And I do want to ask about, Lindsay, you're in your first job, right? And Abby, you will get a job at some point. Or like, no, you
one would hope.
You will have experiences. You will have a next step. Okay. But like, what are you feeling? And it can be you or, a peer or someone, just you're online, you're in the world, what is it like being a young person, right, in the like it's like you left college, now what? Like, right? Like, do you feel like you have supports in place? Do you feel like the world is telling you you need to do something, like you're late, you're early, I don't know, like we get mixed messages. And so it's like, I really want to ask from people who are just fresh out of college, like, what did everything drop off, or do you feel like there's still supports? Do you feel like you have something going for you, or do you feel like you're fighting against different? I don't want to like bias your answer, but I'm just curious, like, what are you experiencing, or what do you feel like your peers are experiencing now that you have the degree, you can check the box, and yeah, what would you say?
I feel like I kind of have a really weird experience with this because almost everyone that I went to school with, Missouri S&T, for those that don't know, is a very small rural engineering school. And almost everyone that I interact with has like a very similar experience to me in terms of like what's going on with them after graduation. I don't think I can't think of anyone that I know off the top of my head that didn't have a job lined up months before graduating. Um, so any sort of like feeling lost is not something that like me or really any of my peers feel. Um, Honestly, most people that go to S&T are from either Kansas City or St. Louis. And I would say most people get a job in one of those two cities and they just go back home and they have their family and their old friends. And most people that graduate from S&T, this is a little bit less of most than the rest of the most, but I would say a lot of people have like super stable, long-term, healthy relationships, like romantically upon leaving. Like many of my friends just moved in with their partner immediately after graduating. They've been dating for 3 years and they're probably going to get married in the next two. And they already have like a home, like a house, not an apartment. Like it's very weird. It's almost like the people that graduate from S&T are just like ready to be adults. Like, and they go home back to their old home with like their new partner who was probably from that same old home, but they just didn't know him yet. And they're like acting like they're married and they still have the support system of both of their families and a lot of their original friends. And they have that comfort of being in that same place that they always knew growing up. So I'm a little bit different. I'm not married and I'm living in a different city than I grew up in. So I have a little bit less of like a support system, but honestly, the people that I like met throughout college and even high school, I still talk to Abby and like a couple other people I met in high school. Like, I think I've created really strong friendships that it still feels like I have a support system. And honestly, the people that I work with have been super fantastic. I worked with them last summer when I interned at my company, and now working with them again. Like, I've shared with them how stupid I feel, and they're very reassuring. And I feel like we can all be very like open and real with each other. So I don't know, it's a very weird experience. And I know that my experience is even different from most people that graduate from S&T, but I know that the people that graduate from S&T have a very vastly different experience than most. So I'm not sure what it is about that little microcosm that does that to us, but that's all I got.
Abby, you had the greatest reactions to that. I'm like, you guys are so different. It's so funny. She's like, no, that was not my path. So yeah, if you don't mind, like kind of unpacking it. And thank you, Lindsay. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I have some thoughts there, but yeah, Abby, what you were like, what? You're not married yet? Am I going to be, invited to a wedding next year? What's going on here? No.
First of all, I better be.
You'll be
I
fine.
will.
It's just the next year part that's
I want to walk the cats down the aisle. I want that to be
There
my
you go.
job. But anyways, yeah, no, that's not. I mean, obviously, Wake Forest is super different in the sense that like the people are from like all over, mostly Northeast, but like all over the country. We've got a lot of international students. We're about like 7,000 undergrads, something like that. I don't know how big S&T is, but it's also like a lot smaller than that, Lindsay.
Mhm.
How much did you say?
7,000 undergrad.
Oh, ours is like 8,000. But your
Oh,
campus still feels way more grandiose than mine does for some reason. I don't
yeah,
know. Maybe the
they're
people there
really
have
into the
bigger
architecture.
personalities.
Yeah.
Bigger personalities for sure. And I guess like more variety in what we're doing, maybe just because we're not so like S&T focused.
Mm.
S&T feels like an army of robots almost. So
Mhm.
maybe everybody just is the same, so it feels smaller. I don't know.
That's fair. Yeah. And like with I guess the culture of the school is very different. Like our unofficial motto for Wake Forest is work hard, party harder, which was they're really big on that. It was really scary my freshman
I
year.
feel like S&T can relate to that.
Nice.
Really? Okay. Yeah, it was nuts. It was nuts. You would see people in your like 8 a.m. chemistry that like were just super hungover. It was like a Tuesday. You were like, what's happening? But anyways, I would say that you have those people that have the like strong relationships or like, you know, those people that the ring by spring people, mostly like pretty religious people that were going in or people that were like ROTC and things like that. But in general, like even the people that I know that have had really strong relationships, like 3 years, 2 years in college and whatnot, aren't like moving in with their partners yet. They're not like searching for jobs with them. They're not getting engaged, things like that. And a lot of people, like I said, that have jobs, they're like, I applied to like 50 minimum and this is what I got. And so I'm going to go and I'm going to try it and see what happens. Or a lot of people, you know, picked the first thing that was kind of adjacent to their degree. Like I have a lot of people, I'm looking at moving to DC because a lot of my friends are moving to DC. And a lot of people, you know, we're politics majors. So they're going there and they're like, what's the first thing in politics adjacent that I can get, you know? And a lot of the culture, I think, especially DC and maybe also just like young culture now, is that like you get your foot in the door somewhere. And then like from there, you can kind of maneuver your way into what you want and kind of maybe find it on the job. I'm not exactly sure, but I would say that I think if you're not in the business school, because they really love the business school people at my school, they don't really set you up as like here's a direct pathway to a job. The people that feel the most settled or like knew what they were doing were going to grad school. They were going to grad school or law school or med school or something. And I even know a ton of people that were like, I don't know what I'm going to do, so I'm going to go to grad school, you know, and do that whole, again, pay a bunch of money while you try to find yourself a pipeline. But yeah, definitely very different from that experience. And I know most people did not move back home. If they didn't have a job, they were like moving back home temporarily and then trying to move to like, you know, the big ones, New York, Boston, DC, LA, even Chicago, that sort of thing. So
Got it. No, this is
so
interesting.
yeah,
I
very
mean,
different.
and thank you for both sharing those stories. You know, obviously, I think we see, you know, a stereotype, but a little bit of like geographical culture, you know, in the United States. You can kind of see that kind of bleeding through here. But it was interesting, Abby. You mentioned before that you it seemed like you seeked out a career counselor to help along this. And Lindsay, it sounds like, and maybe, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, that that is kind of built into the program that you were going through, or because it seems like everybody's getting, you know, it's a science and technology. Is there a difference here? Was there more like, hey, here, more experiential learning at where you were in Missouri versus Wake Forest?
I have some theories.
Okay, yeah, let's go.
Well, first of all, to get my degree, I had to fulfill an experiential learning credit. And this can be a lot of different things. We have things called design teams, which are basically like teams that design stuff and go to competitions, and they do engineering in that aspect. But I think the vast majority of S&T graduates get their experiential learning credit through an internship. So I kind of had the fire under my butt, not to get like a full-time job, but to just get an internship so that I could fulfill that credit and graduate. Because I did a design team, and we have to write like a 3 to 5 page paper about our experiential learning to get the credit. And I did a design team. I didn't feel like I had enough to write about. So by like my junior or my sophomore year, I was like, I need an internship now. So I think I was more under pressure to get an internship, and I got my job from my internship. And I think that is somewhat typical. It's not like the vast majority, but I would say a good portion of people get their full-time jobs through their internship. And if not through the same company, they at least have that experience to say, hey, I've worked on a job site. And then I think another thing that kind of contributes to people having jobs right off the bat, my university has one of the biggest career fairs in the region hosted at our school. And we have probably like hundreds of companies come and talk to us. And professors will typically like not expect you to come to class that day. I just think it's more of an expectation. I think the fact that we need to do something tangible to even graduate kind of makes us more prepared to have something tangible set up when we leave. But yeah, I don't know. It's definitely unique. I know that what happens at my school is not common elsewhere.
Yeah. Tell us about that, Abby. Is it? I mean, what was Wake Forest like? I mean, it's a big name. Like Wake Forest is, you see it everywhere.
Really? I feel like nobody ever knows. They always think I went to like Lake Forest in Chicago, and I'm like, no, not that one.
Little different.
But a little different. But I will say I had a similar thing. So for neuroscience, which is only a minor, but in order to get it, I had to do a minimum of a semester, but recommended 2 semesters worth of research, which is supposed to, give you kind of that internship, like on the job experience. But I will say the thing with research is it's not like interning for a company. It's like you're working under, one specific lab group within like a bigger academic institution within a larger hospital. Like it's like you're connected to 5 people that can't really connect you to like anybody else within a group kind of situation. So like I worked in a couple of different labs across the country. I did one in WashU here that was really great, but they're like not doing that study anymore. And so you'd have to like move on with different coordinators and different people. I did one at Vanderbilt where it was like, I was out of this like home that they'd remodeled. It was a very interesting experience, but
Nashville's growing out of hand, so I get it.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, it was on Music Row, and it was a great experience.
Nice.
Would not do that kind of research again, but like it's like a very isolating kind of experience where unless you're going back to that like specific lab, you don't have a lot of connections. And when you're doing the research with your school, unless you're trying to stay within that lab, within the city you went to school in, it doesn't like open a lot of doors for you. I mean, some people have, if you have a direct connection with like your actual PI who knows people and networks and like is a name in the field, then that can get you places. But like I was working directly under like a PhD candidate. So like he's not even a PhD doctor yet, and he doesn't have like, he's not done with school, like kind of thing. So it's not like he can open a lot of doors except for, writing me a good recommendation for if I want to go and pursue a PhD. So I would say that like when you're doing research, it doesn't necessarily end up giving you a job. It's just giving you like experience. And then my school, I have a little bit of beef with the Career Center. So like I said, they really love the business school, and the business school has their own career center.
Hmm.
And then the rest of the school has a career center, and it's like 6 people. And the 6 people each have like 7 or 8 majors and like subjects that they help with.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just so happened that the person that was in charge of my subject area was like undergoing cancer treatment at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So she was just like not super present, and they did not find somebody to fill in for her at the time. And it was just like not super accessible, in my opinion. So I had been having some tense conversations with my mother about, what was I going to do? What was I applying for? What was I even looking into? And my mom, like I said, she's a doctor, but beyond that, she did the 6-year med program at UMKC. So like she was on the speed train to her path, like
Right.
starting at 18.
Yeah.
I even think she started college at 17. Like she had to decide, and she was in there, and in 6 years she was done. She found her path. She immediately went to residency or whatever it is afterwards.
Residency, yeah,
and
that's
then
physicians.
and
Yeah,
then
that's where they go.
and then immediately moved back to St. Louis, got her job, and stayed there for like 15 years until she got the next one. So she was like, I don't understand how to help you, because this is not my path, and I only know how to speak on my path, which I took in the 90s. So it was really helpful to get this career counselor and really talk on it. And that was, like I said, that thing where I was like, oh, there are so many jobs that I had no idea existed. So I don't know what the end of my point is, but
was the
it was
career
different.
counselor, is this like an external? This was nothing to do with the university. This was just somebody you saw like a professional.
External.
Okay. Yeah.
Because so I have some like close family friends that are kind of like cousins. We like grew up together.
Sure.
And the boy closest to my age, he's a year older. He had graduated from WashU with in physics, and had done a bunch of research, kind of like me, had no idea what he wanted to do. And his mom her background was like in comms and stuff like that. And she was like, I don't know how to help you. But somebody that she had worked with previously became a career counselor after like having a bunch of changes in her life, and like kind of almost seeming like how you guys started the podcast and what you guys were thinking about. Like she was like, okay, let me help impart my wisdom of going through all these different stages of adulthood into these young adults. And she ended up helping him find his path, and now he's doing like a pre-grad school thing in New York. And so she offered her services to my mom, and we were like, okay, let's get it.
Awesome.
So
yeah, no, that makes sense.
So yeah, completely external. And it was honestly kind of helpful because I don't know, with Wake Forest, there's a lot. I don't know if there's the same thing, Lindsay, with S&T, where you start getting like almost like competitive or like comparative to everybody else around you, or they're trying to like squeeze you into a path that they know is successful. Because when it comes to a university, like they say they care about you as an individual, but like they're still a business, and it looks better when they can say 90% of Wake grads, have a job by 6 months out of graduation, and so if they can shoehorn you into something where they know they can get you into, it's like they're going to push you to that rather than like sit with you and explore what you want and things like that. So
interesting. Yeah.
Which I mean, you get a job, so
yeah.
I think engineering just kind of lends itself well to a very straightforward path, I would say. And not to stereotype, because I definitely don't think I fall into the stereotype of an engineer, but I think most people who are interested in engineering kind of just have a straightforward kind of way of living in general. There's not many free-spirited artistic folk at S&T, really. There's a few. Not a lot.
Not even an environmental?
No.
She's like, I deal with the floods.
Yeah.
This has gone like so awesome, and we want to be respectful of your time, because we only blocked so much from this. I could keep talking with you. The three of us are gonna have to do some more catching up off the podcast. Before we kind of like wrap up, Peter, do you have any like a last question, or what are your kind of final thoughts as we bring this awesome episode to a close?
Well, number one, let me start with the priv. So what was it about Miss Dahl now, in high school that drew you to her classroom even after your freshman year? I think that I just kind of want to share that off with our educators. Like, what was it? Because they're really, I've had those students as well, and I love those students. I'm actually very close to those students now as well. So, but what was it? What really drew you to her classroom, like to hang out?
I think some teachers can kind of feel threatening. And Priv was young and fun, and went skydiving. She was adventurous, and I think it was very obvious that she put intention into making her class not a bore for
Mhm.
everyone. And she was like, she put intention into like getting to know the students. I think that's something that I valued even more in college. It was second semester of sophomore year before one of my professors even knew my name, like
Mm,
me individually as a person. So I think I just feel connected to teachers that seem like they care,
mhm.
but also she was just fun. For some reason, she just felt easy to talk to, which was strange because when I first joined high school, I was closed off to pretty much everyone. Abby was my first friend, and it didn't come until like November where we were like actually friends.
All right, you got it.
True that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, part of it was like, this is where it all started. Was it first period? It
Yep,
was
first.
first period, freshman year, like first high school class. And yeah, like Riv just had like an aura to her where she was like, welcome, high school is not going to be super scary. I'm going to try to like actually connect with you as people. I want you to learn these things because I'm excited about these things. And I feel like, yeah, Lindsay, like I had friends coming into it because I went to the middle school that fed into it. But like Lindsay was my first like high school friend. And I like that was the point. That was where it all started. Like, why not come back there? And then, as it came on, like as we got older, it definitely like we formed just like kind of a friendship and a connection. And like Priv helped us through like so many things or talked us through so many things, whether it was homework, whether it was like college boys that we should not have been talking to. Things like
I
that.
want
Like,
to interrupt. I want to interrupt and say that there was once a point in time where the three of us discussed going on a triple date. Well, I'll leave it at that.
true. To be fair, that was after we graduated.
Of
So,
course.
It was.
Yes,
It
yes,
was.
yes. After we graduated high school.
Love
mhm.
it.
But for
It was funny because you guys would always like come in and my room was filled with all these memes of all they'd make fun of all the science things I would say, and they
Hmm.
made it fun. So they just found a way to make learning, no matter what it was, fun. Like we
Yeah.
always would be laughing.
Yeah.
So that's what I always remember. And I was like, I always felt lucky that you guys had picked my classroom to be like the spot
Yeah.
for you to hang out. And so yeah, after they graduated, we had talked for 4 years. After you graduate, we can go and get brunch was always
Hmm.
the
yes.
Hmm.
well we got brunch.
Hmm.
So
Waited 4 years for it.
I kind of wanted to wrap this into my final thought because I think it's very interesting all the way through from freshman year of high school all the way through your college, is the importance of number one, having somebody really listen to you and really understand what you are very interested in rather than a number going through and pushing you for some sort of data that's going to help the system. In both of your stories, that was kind of something that was, very evident, and pretty much it can be damaging, and very costly as well to young people and their families. And I think that to me was the biggest takeaway as you're going through this process of learning and then going into the professional world. Like, where does that academia and that professional world, where should it actually start to intertwine, and where does it actually intertwine, and how can we improve that? So you ladies, thank you so much for your stories. This really has helped everybody on the podcast who's listening to hear, that navigating that path is difficult, and there are bumps in it, and those to us are opportunities. So I want to thank you both for sharing those.
Yeah.
Or
Where can people connect with you? If they, Abby, you're looking for a job, so you never know who's listening. And where do you hang out professionally, or where would you want people to connect with you off the podcast?
Well, my LinkedIn is updated, Lindsay. So I'm there.
Mhm.
I don't know. That's
Yeah.
all.
Okay. LinkedIn. All right.
I'll update my LinkedIn and that'll be the spot too.
Perfect. You'll get tagged on all of the episodes. For everyone listening to this podcast, thank you so much. Be sure to like and subscribe. Catch us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Spotify, wherever you listen. And yeah, so we are wrapping this summer series up with our guest next week, and you won't want to miss it. But for Peter Hostrawser, I'm Alli Dahl. Thank you for listening to us here on the Disrupt Education Podcast. We will see you next week.
All right. That's a wrap on this episode of the Disrupt Education Podcast. Let's keep the momentum going. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode out.
If you want to dive deeper into disrupting education, visit our website at disrupteducationpodcast.com.
Here's the bottom line. We believe real change in education starts locally. It happens when communities come together to rethink learning. If you're an educator, school leader, or organization looking to take action towards real change in education, we are here to help. Reach out and connect.
And we'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. So drop us a line wherever you listen. And until next time, take that bold step beyond your comfort zone. Challenge the status quo and be the change education truly needs.
Because at the end of the day, education isn't just about subjects. It's about students. And when we dare to disrupt, the future of learning is waiting.